Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. The Democrats lost cause. That's the subject of tonight's Waters Words. Democrats have had their eyes on Texas for decades. It's gotten so close to turning blue, they can taste it. Ronald Reagan won Texas by 30 points, and almost 40 years later, Trump won just by single digits. So right when it's within striking distance, Trump beat Biden there by just 6 points. Under these loose pandemic rules, Democrats want to make those rules permanent. Texas Republicans say no. We're going to make it easier to vote, but harder to cheat. Texas Democrats start howling racism and fly to D.C., leaving the legislature half empty. Texas Democrats won't vote because they can't cheat next time. That's what this is all about. Now, I read the bill, so you don't have to. And my buddy Harold Ford Jr., Democrat, couldn't point out a single thing in it that restricted voting. Senate Bill 7, so-called racist restrictions on voting are as follows. You can't have a polling station in a tent or a parking garage. So no pop-up polling stations. And when you request a ballot by mail, you have to write your signature and you have to write your ID that's on your license. Or if you don't have a driver's license, the last four numbers of your social security number. Done. How's that restrictive? It's not. They actually expand voting hours all across the board, and companies are required to allow workers to go leave work on election day and go vote. Here's actually what makes it harder to cheat in Texas and why the Democrats are howling. You can't kick poll watchers out of polling stations. And the polling workers have to be able to see the counts. And if you're in a big city, they have to live stream the counting rooms. Also, counties have to clean up these old, dusty voter rolls. And all votes have to have a paper trail, so they can't just disappear in a machine. And paying for votes becomes a felony. Democrats don't like that. And the machines have to have software that aren't allowed to change votes. And officials can't just mail out ballots without having them requested. So no mass mailing of ballots and no ballot harvesting. Tell me what the objection is to all of these things in the bill. What's the objection?
Well, it's
because they seem to be looking for a problem.
No, but all of the things I just read that's actually in the bill, what is objectionable? Couldn't answer. Now that Trump's gone and the pandemic's over, Democrat talking points are empty. They have nothing. They actually have to debate the policy, and they can't. So they're just lying and screaming racism. Now, Biden couldn't name a single thing in the Texas bill that actually disenfranchises anybody.
21st century Jim Crow assault is real. It's unrelenting. And we're going to challenge it vigorously. Are you on the side of truth or lies? Fact or fiction? Justice or injustice? Democracy or autocracy? That's what it's coming down to. Stand up for God's sake and help prevent this concerted effort to undermine our election and the sacred right to vote. Have you no shame? We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War.
They don't even believe their own lies. If this was really Jim Crow, why are Texas Democrats smiling like goofballs with a case of light beer? If black Americans were really being disenfranchised, they'd have their game faces on. And Jim Crow, by the way, was a Democrat operation to stop blacks from voting. It was Republicans who freed the slaves. Kamala Harris, not a student of history, even compared the Texas fleabaggers to Frederick Douglass.
They took bold, courageous action in line with the legacy of everyone from Frederick Douglass, who's over my right shoulder, when he fought for the right of black men to vote in America, to the legacy that includes all those women who marched down Pennsylvania Avenue for women's right to vote, to all of those folks who shed their blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge to make sure that we would, in 1965, pass the Voting Rights Act.
Earth to Kamala. Frederick Douglass slapped on a disguise, borrowed cash, took a train and a steamboat out of slave state Maryland into Philly, risking his life. The Democrats haven't risked their biscuits. They hopped on a private jet and posted selfies. Frederick Douglass was a great orator. And from what I've heard so far, none of these Democrats can explain how this Republican bill restricts voting, because it doesn't. Black people don't have social security numbers. Black Americans don't have ID. Here's Ami Horowitz asking white and black voters their opinions on voting laws that these Democrats have been furious with for years.
Do you have an opinion on voter ID laws?
Yeah, they're usually pretty racist.
I think voter ID laws are a way to perpetuate racism.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely, because they're less likely to have state IDs.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
Do you have ID normally? You carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID.
Why would they say that?
You know how to get the DMV?
Of course.
And I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet.
That's just stupidity, honestly. Everybody has access to the internet.
What does that say to you for the people who have this perception of black people?
They're pretty much ignorant of it.
I think it is a little racist.
There you have it. The only people who think these laws are racist or suppress the black vote are white liberals. They want to scare Americans into submission with these racist lies. But it's a lost cause because we have the truth on our side.